Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Tears from Tutor Collegiate Strategies, and you're about to check out the latest episode of the Mission Admissions Podcast, a show that's designed to help higher ed become better recruiters, communicators, marketers, and managers. Each week, I'll introduce you to an industry leader or difference maker who will share helpful advice, tips, and strategies that will help you grow professionally and personally. Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify podcast network and is made possible by Gecko, an engagement platform that makes it easy for your team to deliver a better student experience. I'm excited to share my latest candid conversation, so let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tears, and this is episode 15 of the Mission Admissions Podcast. Today's episode is the last one in our first season, and it's the second part of a special two-part series that I'm doing on the topics of mindset, mental toughness, and mental skills. If you missed part one or haven't had a chance to listen to my conversation with well-known performance mindset coach Lindsay Wilson, please check that out. I think you'll find it super helpful. Before I dive into part two and introduce you to Tami Matheny, I want to again thank everybody for listening. Your time and attention means a ton to me, whether you've listened to all the episodes or you've listened to just one or two, or even if this is your first one. Please know that I appreciate you. I really hope you've been able to take something that one of my guests, or maybe it'll be Tami today, says and apply it to your daily life to help you grow. That is my hope. So I'm excited to welcome my friend Tami Matheny to the show today. Tami is an author, a speaker. She's the owner of Refuse to Lose Coaching, and she's a member of the John Gordon team. As a mental coach, Tami helps a lot of people improve things like their confidence, focus, motivation, mental toughness, and teamwork. Fun fact about Tami, she's also completed a handful of marathons. Tami and I have only done one half marathon that I did because I did it with my dad. And Tami is also an avid cyclist. So welcome to the show, Tami.
I'm excited to be here, Jeremy.
So Tami, what led you to get into the world of helping people with their mindset and mental skills? Like, how did that come about for you?
You know, it was a gradual thing. I can't look back and say that this was the moment that I had that aha. But as an athlete growing up, and even in school, I was never the strongest, quickest, fastest, but I had a pretty good work ethic. And I knew there was something about this confidence piece that you hear people talk about. And I knew when I had confidence how much easier school was, or sports. And so it always fascinated me. And kind of aging myself, that was before the whole sports psychology, outburst. But just, anything I could pick up to read about the brain fascinated me. Going to college, and I was on what I call the confidence roller coaster. Get a good grade, I was at the top. Have a bad grade, I came down. Same with sports. Hit a shot in basketball, I'm up. Miss a shot, down. And it was just such an exhausting ride. I had a lot of success, but it was exhausting. And I thought there's got to be a better way. So even as a college student, I just started studying what makes people true confidence. What do they have that I don't have I can get from them? And eventually that led to formally studying it and just trying to make a difference and help people get off of that roller coaster sooner than I did.
So where do you think self-confidence comes from then? Is it something our parents and other people instill it in us at a young age? Or is it, no, even if that doesn't happen, like you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, where do you think it comes from?
Well, I think parents, coaches, teachers can definitely help. But I think there's too much emphasis put on that. Because, it's easy to have confidence when you're getting the results and or feedback. But that's fleeting because we can't control that. So what I've tried to do in the Confident Athlete book, my first book, was to identify 4 areas that we can control. And if we work on a consistent basis, we start to own our confidence. And that's self-talk, all of the thoughts that we have in our head, and just helping people learn how to talk more positively or productively. I don't think everything should be positive, but having a productive thought instead of just putting ourselves down. Second one is what I call walk the walk, or our body language, how we carry ourselves, our face expressions. The third I call see it, be it. And that's what image do we have of ourselves? And how can we recreate that image and actually visualize that's who we want to be, as well as visualizing our skills so we get that extra reps in that helps our confidence. And last but not least is preparation. It's hard to be confident when you haven't put in the work. And I think a lot of people know that, but they focus on the physical work. But that also entails the mental and the emotional work as well to help with the physical.
Is there one of those, Tami, that you see people struggle more than with the rest, or is it kind of a balance of all of them?
I would say self-talk. And then obviously that ties into the image we have of ourselves, because our images come from our thoughts, obviously. But, you know, I've read different studies, and there's one study that says 90% of the people in the world think and have unproductive and negative thoughts more than they have positive. So that to me is there's a lot of unproductivity out there, but yet we're still productive. So how much more successful can we be once we learn to talk to ourselves instead of listen? Because too often we listen instead of talking and being intentional with what we're thinking.
So what is the process then, if you can break it down for somebody listening, what is the process of self-talk? How does that happen?
You know, there's a lot of different exercises or tools that I do pull from. I would say a lot of several of my go-tos is analyzing the stories or narratives that you tell yourselves. We all identify ourselves like, if I'm in the sports world, I'm not so good with my left hand. And we say that over and over and over till that's what it becomes. Or I can never get that type of job. And it may be true up to that point, but every time you speak it, you're just reaffirming that fact. And, you know, I have stories I tell myself. I mean, you know, I talk about this every day, but I still have to go back, write down the story I'm telling myself, and then rewrite the new narrative. And I don't believe in lying to my brain. Using the example of the left hand again, I'm not going to say, oh, I have the best left hand in America. No, I don't. My brain's going to say, no, you don't, Tami. But I'm working on my left hand, or I'm getting better at my left hand. So it's telling our brain that there is hope if we keep putting in the work, instead of just like, no, I'm no good at talking to people. You know, one more example I'll give you. I made very good grades in school, except for anything involving writing. Kind of ironic now that, you know, I'm an author. But I just would tell myself, I can't write. And the feedback I would get from teachers was the same. And senior year in high school, I actually got a book report back with a big F on it. And she said it was too good to be mine. And I had done the work, but basically she was accusing me of plagiarizing. And I listened to that story, and it was just easy to say, no, I don't write. And so my first book was actually kind of a selfishness of me showing and getting out of my comfort zone that I could write and changing that narrative in that story. So that's just another example of, to me, that's the most important thing. You know, stop for, you know, take some time, take 30 minutes, and think about what stories are you telling yourself that are holding you back in your job, in your personal life, or if you're trying to do something athletically. And then rewrite it. And then every time you have that negative thought or say it out loud, then come back with what you've rewritten 3 to 5 times to help override that negative story.
How important, you mentioned writing things down, and it's interesting. I've had, you know, previous guests, and a lot of them have talked about the importance of everything from journaling to just writing things down anytime you're trying to improve something, whether it's a mindset related thing or not. How important do you think writing stuff down plays into all this?
You know, I think that's a personal decision. We all learn different ways. I know for myself, if I'm sitting in class or if I'm listening to a sermon or listening to a podcast, I can listen and think, oh yeah, I like that idea. But if I do not write it down, it is lost somewhere in the brain after it's over. And so I retain information better by writing it down. And a lot of people do. Some people retain it better by just really paying attention and soaking it in and maybe repeating it afterwards. So what I always tell clients is the best retention is when you can bring it back up 3 different ways. So tell someone, share it with someone, what you've learned, write it down, and then actually try to act it, put it into action. So I think, back to your question, I think writing is very important, and I know at least for myself it is.
So then, how important is success when it comes to, okay, I've started to do more self-talk, I'm doing more visualization, I'm doing some of those things you mentioned. How important do you think success is in terms of then reinforcing the brain to believe, okay, I not only am rewriting a different narrative, but I'm seeing this new narrative actually like benefit me or do something for me? Do you need to see success to continue to reinforce it? Or, thoughts on that?
I think it's very important. I think you can still be successful. Rome wasn't built in a day. Again, different studies say it takes 21 to 30 days for new habits. So, I always like to preface that it's not a magic pill. It's not necessarily going to change overnight. Sometimes it does. But you think about how long you've been thinking that narrative or that story. And so it's not going to just disappear overnight. So it's putting in the work and being consistent with it. And obviously when you see a little bit of success, that does usually give you a little more motivation to continue.
What do you think the hardest mental skill then is to teach somebody, Tami, or to help somebody with?
Believing in themselves. That's... They want to, but some people, or a lot of people, are almost scared of what might happen if they actually do believe in themselves. And then there's the, how do I believe in myself? I struggled with that early on, so I understand that and I get that. But I know how much better life is when I can start thinking positively before something happens. John Gordon has this saying that fear and faith live in the same arena. And that arena is the future. Both, if you fear something or you have faith something, belief in something, it's about something that has yet to happen. So why in the world would you pick fear over faith and belief in yourself? That was an aha moment for me when he put it that way. But it is. Usually when we don't believe in ourselves, it's because of something that has yet to happen. And then there's the second thought. It's something that has already happened that happened once, so it's going to happen again. So it's helping people being in the present moment is another tool, but, with your self-talk and teaching people to focus in the present moment. Don't dwell on something that's already happened or think too far ahead. So I think that's the second skill that probably is very important with our self-talk and learning of staying in that present moment.
I don't think I've met a single higher ed professional that loved everything about their technology stack. Here's the honest truth. No CRM or SIS will be able to meet all of the needs of all of your team. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Gecko, a student engagement platform that offers customizable modules designed to complement your institution's CRM and SIS. Gecko offers plug-and-play modules that enable your team to deliver memorable student experiences at scale. Their chatbot and texting tools will empower your admissions team to engage with the highest quality prospects by serving as a front line of defense for prospects that have basic questions about the college admissions process. Gecko's event module makes it easy to create awesome online and in-person event experiences one time and then duplicate them throughout the year with just a couple of clicks. Their call center is also an industry leader. No more splitting call lists into a dozen Excel files, scrolling through data to find who you need to call next, or having to manually record who picked up and who didn't. Oh, and did I mention that everything integrates seamlessly into your CRM and SIS? Because it does. So if you're a Slate school, for example, you'll see all of that sweet interaction data in your student's timeline. If you want to level up how you engage with prospective students, but you don't want to disrupt your processes, rip out all your tech, or start a new CRM procurement process, you need to check Gecko out. You can learn more about their offerings at geckoengage.com/Enrollify. And be sure to tell them that Jeremy and the Enrollify team sent you their way. That's so important, and I love that you brought up fear. It's something that when I have conversations with admissions, enrollment marketing, financial aid professionals, fear comes up almost every time, and it's surprising to hear from so many people, Tami. Wait, why would I need to talk about fear? Why do I need to address different fears and concerns that a prospective student or a parent might have? And to your point, I would argue it's just who we are as humans. We all have them at some point in our life, if not multiple times. And I love how you said a lot of times it's something that hasn't happened yet. And I say that because one of the biggest fears that every single time gets brought up about the college search is fear of making the wrong decision. Like as a student athlete, like, how do I know if I choose this school, like I'm not going to get there in 2 months and go, what did I do?
The first thought is go to preparation of making sure you've prepared and put in your work to figure out if it is on paper in your head the best option. It might not be the perfect option. Rarely is it anything perfect. But what is the best option? Let's do your homework. Let's research if it's the school you're going to. Does it have what you want? Thinking of scenarios, would you be happy in this situation, that situation? So doing your homework, putting in the work, and then once you make a decision, goes back to the story you tell yourself. And when I am working with athletes of helping them with that decision, my thing is once you make it, you got to be all in. And that's the same with a job. Once you decide to take a job, you've got to be all in, or most likely it's not going to work out because you're listening to those what ifs. Did I make the right decision? Instead of when you go to your school, go to the university, when this class is hard, instead of thinking, did I make the right decision? Okay, it's hard. What am I going to do about it? And being proactive and productive with your thoughts instead of just the easy way out. Did I make the wrong decision? And I think too often, I don't want to generalize, but in our society, especially with our youth, we think too much in terms of how do I get out of this instead of how am I going to get through this?
Why do you think that is, though, Tami? Because I agree with you 100%. I feel like the struggle is, and I see this in my day-to-day, and I'm sure you do, and a lot of people listening do, we know a lot of times, all right, this isn't working, what we're doing. We need to do something different. We need to take a different approach. And we even, I would argue, come up with strategies sometimes on what to do. And then I feel like, I don't know if it's the fear of failure, the fear of this is new, I've never done it before, but like action, right? Actually putting it into practice seems like such a big speed bump for so many people. Agree or disagree?
I completely agree. And, you ask why, and that would probably be a whole nother podcast. I have so many ideas on that.
Well, what are some of them? Because I'd love to hear them.
I think society as a whole has changed, and we let people quit too often. There was no option for me when I was playing sports, or I even remember I had piano lessons, and I hated them. But there was no way my parents were letting me quit till I got through a series of them. I knew that, so I tried to make the most of it. Instead of knowing I had that option, if I didn't like it, I could just quit. So I do think as a society as a whole, we allow people to quit too early. I went to the University of North Carolina my first semester. It'd been my dream school. That's where I was going. No question about it. Didn't even look at other schools. I was miserable as soon as I got there. It was such a bigger school than my high school. I wasn't used to that. I had not thought ahead of that. But my parents were like, nope, you've got to stay at least one semester and figure it out. And I'm thankful that they didn't allow me to. Now, I probably wasn't the nicest daughter to them at that time, but, it taught me to be able to push through things and figure it out. And that wasn't the right answer for me at that time. But I could look myself in the mirror and know I made the right decision at the end of the semester when I did transfer out, instead of just being able to quit right in the middle of things.
Well, we all need to fail, right? And I'm sure I didn't understand that as a 16-year-old, 13-year-old, or even a 24-year-old, young professional. But to your point, I talk a lot, and I'm sure you do too with people, it's okay to fail. But to your point, what are you going to do about it now? And why did you fail? Yeah. Did you fail because you weren't prepared and it's a preparation thing? Did you fail because, you know what? situationally something happened that you didn't plan for when you played out, okay, here's how I think this is going to happen, and you visualized and you did all these things. I would argue you could do, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, you can have the right preparation, you can visualize, you can give yourself confidence, and you're still potentially going to be put in a situation where it doesn't play out. And I think a lot of times it's back to your point of, well, what are you going to do now? That's where we get stuck. It's like, oh, well, it must have been bad. I must have not prepared. I must have. Just any thoughts on how to overcome something like that?
Well, it's kind of my tagline or go-to, and it's this is good, creating a this is good mentality. Because I look back, and that first semester did not go how I wanted, but in the long run, it was good. It led me to where I needed to be. It taught me a lot about myself instead of, it was just a failure. Losing a job. I've lost a job before, and the first month or two I threw a pity party, but ultimately it led me to my dream job, what I do now, and I wouldn't have been here if I hadn't been let go. And so it's creating that this is good, and I stole it from an African folktale I heard long ago. You can even see one of my books are titled This Is Good. I wear it on my wrist every single day. But it's the mindset that nothing's good or bad till we decide it is. And there'll be bad events that happen, and the human brain naturally just will default to negative. This is bad, this is a danger, this is a threat. But when we can teach it just to pause, stay alive mentally, to allow something different or better to show up in our lives, then that's when success happens. We need failure to learn. If we're talking in the sports world, very rarely do you see a championship team that didn't have that bad loss and they look back on it like, that woke us up, or that helped teach us what we need to. You see that in every aspect of life. So it's creating that this is good mindset and keeping your brain alive long enough to overcome that failure and seeing failure as necessary. We need to fail to learn.
It gets me thinking, and again, just something else I'd love to pick your brain on. What do you think about the idea of who you surround yourself with matters? Meaning, obviously, if you surround yourself with people who are more positive, right? And it doesn't mean they don't fail, and it doesn't mean they do everything perfectly, but like they're open to the conversation. And I'll even say they call you on your crap, right? Which I've talked about before. I would argue we all need those people, and when we have those people, it actually benefits us for more good, versus if we surround ourselves with a lot of people who do always believe the worst. That obviously is then more likely a trait we're going to take on. Thoughts on any of that?
I completely agree. Because our brains are so easily influenced. And even though you might think you're in control, if you're surrounding yourself with negative, with lazy, we start to take on those traits. I've seen that in my own life, even when I've got this. I can handle this. You just start to slowly change based on who you're surrounding yourself by. I even say that with social media. I know there's a lot of administrators, coaches that are anti-social media, but it's here. So my goal is, how can I help create a positive niche? And in saying that, my goal in the morning is I have a handful of social medias that I like to read, and I make sure that they're positive, and I'm filling my brain with that. If I look on just the feed of the negativity, then it puts negativity in me, and I can feel my body change. I can inside. So even it's what we read and hear, even the music we listen to, I think can be a big factor in influencing us, because we're easily influenced. So I completely agree with you.
I joke with people, but it's a perfect point on top of what you just said. I mean, back to music. Music is something for me, 100%, that helps me remain in a positive mindset, right? When I'm at the gym or when I go up and I give a keynote or a presentation, 100% I have whatever you want to think of, a playlist, walkout music in my brain that I'm listening to. None of it's negative songs, right? It's all positive things. It's all pick-me-up music. It's all like high energy type stuff. And I appreciate all your thoughts there. I think that will absolutely help a ton of people. You mentioned habits earlier. How important of a role do you think habits then play in our professional life?
We are what we do on a consistent basis. So our habits create our behavior, and ultimately create our success or lack of success. I mean, that's, about as blunt as I can put it. But when you have good, positive habits, then you're creating a positive, confident life. When you don't, then sometimes you have success, sometimes you don't, and it's random.
Hey everybody, it's Zach from Enrollify here. So it's that time of year when your favorite brands release the best deals on your favorite products. And for the very first time, Enrollify is joining the party. So between now and the end of the year, you can get 50% off any Enrollify cohort or master course. Want to learn more about how to leverage SEO for student recruitment? We've got a cohort on just that, led by the SEO wizards at DD Agency. Or are you ready to learn more about how schools are leveraging TikTok? Enroll in our self-paced TikTok strategy for higher ed cohort. Or perhaps you are finally ready to join 550 other higher ed marketers in enrolling in Terry Flannery's master course on how to market a university. Use the discount code EOY50, that's EOY as in end of year, 50, for any of our asynchronous cohorts, or EOY as in end of year, for our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery between now and 12/31/22 to receive 50% off. You can learn more at enrollify.org. Happy holidays, everybody.
I think consistencies, I talk a lot in levels, so I'll say, hey, you got to do the 101 before you do the 201 and 301. And I feel like one of the big challenges moving up levels in any job or career is, can you do whatever you need to do on a consistent basis, right? I can have good days and I can have bad days, but can I be more consistent with my preparation, with my habits that lead to then more good days than bad days? And I just see a lot of people struggle with that. How do you start a new habit then, Tami? What does it really take?
It takes the self-talk. What we tell ourselves helps influence our actions. So it starts with, I am going to do this today. I will do this today. And going back to my story I shared about writing a book, I had those thoughts I couldn't write. And one of my, what I call Zoom daily activities I did was just repeatedly tell myself, I am going to write. I can write. I am going to. It's the same like with weight loss. Someone that's trying to lose weight, you have to tell yourself, no, I'm not going to eat that piece of cake. Or, yes, I'm getting up and going to work out. Just to tie that in, I read a study. I believe it was from Forbes. I need to go back and look for it. But it was about 15 years ago. And there was research done on the successful traits of every possible field they could think of, from athletes to musicians to administrators, Fortune 500, presidents. And the number one trait, I love to have people guess, but the number one trait was the most successful people control their thoughts. Not that they, had goals or they had failure, but because they control their thoughts, because that ultimately controls the rest of everything else. If I can control my thought, I'm going to be disciplined and get up in the morning to work or work out. If I can control my thoughts, then I'm handling that failure and seeing it as this is good. So in a nutshell, it comes down to our thoughts.
And how much easier do you think it is to control your thoughts when you've defined your why?
You're speaking my language. I'm in love with why. Because if we don't know our why, then our thoughts are going to go everywhere. But when you know your why and you connect with it, like say it to yourself in the mirror first thing in the morning. That's one of my little morning rituals. Then it's just adding that oomph. It gives you that power. It gives you that motivation. And it helps you stay in control of your thoughts. When I start to struggle, I was in administration at a university after coaching, and I struggled sitting behind the desk and a computer. Well, since COVID, my job has kind of pivoted a lot to doing Zooms and being behind a desk. And I have right above my computer here my why statement. So when I'm like, oh, I have to sit behind the computer again, I look at my why and remember why I get to sit behind the computer. And it's amazing how that little thing of reconnecting with my why just shifts my focus. And so I think your why is people say, that seems too simple. It can't have that much power. But when you really know why you're doing something, that's all the motivation you need. And when you don't get that short-term result that you want, you reconnect with your why, and it helps put things in perspective.
I love that, and I could not agree more. And for me, my professional career, no doubt, defining my why has helped me take what I do professionally to a whole different level. And, you know, those of you that have been able to see my office because you've done a Zoom with me, or, you know, if you can see in the background, there are just things on my shelves and thing on my wall that you'd be like, well, like, what's the significance of that? So many of them tie back into my why, right? And I see so many people. So if you're listening to this and you have not clearly defined your why, please let that be the one thing you take away from either listening to Tami today or just in general, because it does. It helps you with mindset and so many other things.
Quoting John Gordon again, and I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but he says, you know, he has a saying that it's not that people get burned out. They just forget why they're doing something. And they start to shift the focus on the negatives or what's not going on. But that is so true. You know, if you're unhappy, having a bad day, gosh, that's such a great antidote. Just go and connect with your why and shift your mind, and I guarantee your day will get better.
Yeah, I had Alan Stein Jr. on my second episode, and you know, Alan talked a lot about burnout and how it's a misalignment, and, you know, in his opinion, and a lot of times it goes back to not, you know, having a defined why, or not being able to say, okay, where I'm at, like, how does that tie into my why? And so, yeah, it's so important. What motivates you then every day, Tami? I mean, what is your why? That's maybe a better question to ask you.
My why is I want to make a difference in as many lives as possible. You know, I want to help people get off of that roller coaster. That's my why that I say, but then I kind of get a little deeper that I want to help people get off the roller coaster sooner than I did. And just help people have a more successful life. We have everything that we need inside us to be successful. We just have to uncover that.
And I'm sure many of you listening to this, right, I'm empathetic to the fact that so many of us have different circumstances and things that we're dealing with, right? And all of that no doubt plays into stuff that Tami and I are talking about today. I just encourage you, it's baby steps, right? It's not, we have to figure it all out today. We have to define our why and all of a sudden come up with a bunch of new habits, start to do visualization, don't overcomplicate this and put added stress on yourself, but just understand, right? It's got to start at some point if you want a different result. Tami, we've been ending every podcast with a couple of things, and so we're going to do them now. I want to ask you the same signature question I've been asking all our guests. What's one important piece of advice that somebody at any point in your life, doesn't matter if you were young or it's happened in the last couple of months or a couple of years, something that somebody's told you that's really stuck?
Do you want to be right or successful? That sticks with me every single day because, you know, a lot of people said I got into the wrong job, should have been a lawyer because I can argue, you know, with a brick wall. But does it help me be right? And not always. And there are many things in life or in your job that you are probably right. But the more you focus on that, it's just hurting your chance of having success.
I love that. That's really, really, I mean, that in and of itself, again, it's just another nugget that I hope helps a lot of people. Fun rapid fire is the last thing I'm doing. So I'm going to give you just a handful of things, and I just want some quick, immediate answers from you, okay?
Okay.
Your biggest guilty pleasure is?
Chocolate.
Wine or beer?
Oh, depends on the day. If I'm watching a game, beer with a nice meal, wine.
Okay. Favorite vacation spot?
Beach. Feet in the sand.
Okay.
Drink in my hand.
You are very much on the same wavelength as me. Favorite college campus you've ever been to or most beautiful? I'll let you do either.
Chapel Hill, UNC.
Duke? No?
No.
I say that sarcastically, obviously, because of the rivalry, although they're both gorgeous campuses.
Of course. Duke is, yes.
Yeah, they're both gorgeous, having been on both. Fill in the blank for me. The best thing about Christmas is?
Family time.
And I would argue the best thing about Thanksgiving, you know, I would say is the same thing. I don't know if you would say something different, but, you know, being able to spend time with family is awesome. Tami, thank you for sharing so much. If people want to connect with you on social or they want to learn more about, you know, some of the things you help orgs and people with, what's the best way to connect with you?
Twitter, Tami, T-A-M-I, Matheny, M-A-T-H-E-N-Y. Instagram, refuse2lose coaching. Facebook, Tami Matheny. I have several different Facebook groups. Parents in the Mental Game, This Is Good, The Confident Athlete. Email, I love getting questions. And, every time I get a question or asking for advice, that's helping me live my why. So please reach out, Tami@r2lc.com.
And as somebody who's known Tami, for a handful of years, off and on, I 100% encourage you to reach out to her, much like I encourage people to reach out to me for the exact reason she just said, which is it helps her with her why. Thanks again, Tami, and just thank you if you've listened today for listening, and I wish everybody health and happiness until the next time we connect.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mission Admissions with Jaime Tears. If you like this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing, learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.